Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you this Tuesday night. If you want to join us on our late-night national town hall conversation, feel free to do it. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And the Trump saga continues. Today he fires back saying that there will be a complete exoneration. And I tend to agree with that. But what I find interesting is how much hate there is towards Trump. And maybe I'm a little bit biased because I'm a New Yorker and Trump is a New Yorker, and a lot of the bluster and bravado and all that stuff, that's just kind of how things are in New York, you know? I mean, New York's one of those places where, you know, you can like walk past somebody and they bump into you and they're like, hey, what the F is wrong with you? F you, pal. Yeah, up yours. You know, hey, and right after that, you can say, hey, where's the L train? And they be, listen, you got to go this way, that way, make a left, take, 2 blocks down, and you'll see it right there. You know, I mean, people are just rough around the edges in New York, and I think that's just a part of the way things are. It's not something that I would hold against Trump, but a lot of people do, and some of the talking heads that are out there, and I don't mean talking heads like me, but I mean the ones that are on TV that are, well, sometimes I'm on TV, but still, other talking heads, not me, like Jeff Duncan. He's a former Republican lieutenant governor. He was on CNN yesterday, and he says Trump sucked the soul out of the Republican Party, and now it's their turn to take it back. Now, nothing wrong with what he's saying, in so much as I have a differing view, but I want you to listen to Jeff Duncan. Check this out.
I think there's going to be a lot of story behind that, right? Who got indicted, who didn't get indicted, who maybe cut a deal, which elements they indicted, what crimes. I mean, there's going to be a lot to have here, but this feels different. What Donald Trump did his most damage in Georgia. He sucked the soul out of the Republican Party here. He sucked the morality out of the Republican Party, the fiscal responsibility out of the Republican Party. He sucked our winning percentage out of the Republican Party. He's taken everything from us, and it is our turn to take it back, right? It's our turn to win elections based on the policies that we think we're better on.
You know, that sounds like some good rhetoric right there. It's fair, and I think it appeals to moderate-minded, fair people. However, I would say it's devoid of factual accuracy if you just look at history, right? Let's see, where do we go? George W. Bush, right? Let's just go back to that. He was the last Republican president. Then came Obama for 2 terms. I would submit to you that the lack of pushback that Republicans put up during the Obama years, and I know everybody, Republicans are obstructionists and John Boehner and blah, blah, blah. They might have, because of pressure from the Tea Party, kind of stuck to their guns on a couple of issues. But for the most part, there wasn't a fight going on, right? It was kind of, let's go along to get along. And in real life, if you this with people and they're not pushing you and you're not pushing them and you're getting along and you take the gentleman's approach to, all right, how do we fix this? Let's cut a deal, right? And that's how politics has been for a very long time. And people liked it because it was clean. At least it appeared to be clean, right? People felt that it was something where they could have this, look, we could disagree agreeably. We could agree to disagree. Things are fine, but it doesn't have to be so toxic. It doesn't have to be so ideological. Because ultimately, these guys were all making deals so that they could all enrich themselves. And, it's a balancing act. You got to bring home some bacon, some pork to your district so you can come back and pound on your chest a little bit. Say, hey, look at all these new highways we got back in federal dollars. Look at what we did here. And that was always the game. But then a guy like Trump runs on the idea that is the problem. This go along to get along thing is the actual problem, where we're not addressing issues, but instead we're cutting deals around them. And every time you cut another deal, it comes out of the pocket of we the people. So when these things start to come out of our pocket and life becomes more and more and more expensive, then each political party starts to take shots at the other one, saying, look at how your quality of life is dissipating under the policies of the other party. And again, that is politics. However, we've reached a point, in my opinion, where people are saying, look, it doesn't matter if you are crook A or crook B. They're all a bunch of crooks. And nobody's doing anything to enhance or help the quality of my life. And I think this is why Trump has so much appeal. Now, the other thing is when this gentleman, Jeff Duncan, when he says that Trump has sucked the soul out of the Republican Party, I would refute that. And I would really take exception to it because, and this is not a defense of Trump. This is more pushback on his statement, which I think is inaccurate. And the reason I position it that way is because I feel like the Republican Party was either dead or on life support when Trump ran. And that was evidenced by nothing more than the slate of candidates that ran and how little they were able to do to put up a fight against him, because he knew what he was talking about and he was coming at them with passion. And they weren't used to dealing with passion. And just rewind the tape to the debates of him and 15 others on the debate stage, people that were well-respected, guys with great position on school choice, like Jeb Bush, governor of Florida, who's governor of a large state. The standards that we had were, he was checking the boxes, right? He was a good governor. He was this, he was that. I mean, you could have criticism of certain things, but for the most part, here's a guy that, many considered serious. I thought he had a very strong position on school choice, which is a big issue for me. And I thought, man, this is a good guy. He's very polished. He knows the game. He's got the experience. He wasn't my guy in the primary, but I felt like he was really going to be a standout candidate in the debates and in the primary. And to my surprise, nobody was able to really hang with Trump. And it was because he just made sense on so many issues and was pointing out that they weren't the solution to the problem. They were the problem. Like Reagan said, government isn't the solution to the problem. Government is the problem. And I think he proved to the American people at that point that this is exactly what we need to do. We need somebody to come in with a fresh set of eyes that does things differently, that's used to making money and building things that are successful and profitable. Whether you question the way he gets there or not, whether he takes advantage of loopholes in the tax code that he didn't create or not, he was winning. And Americans not only gravitated to that, but then they felt the effects of what that looks like when you run a country that way. And you cut red tape and you cut regulations and you allow people to flourish, and household median incomes go up by $6,500 and people do better than they were doing. And when you get to that point, and then you have people saying, oh, but he's this and he's a Russian agent and he's that and the other and he's this and they're spying on him, they're doing all sorts of things. This is why people stick to their guns with Trump. And I would say it's the exact opposite. Trump didn't suck the soul out of the Republican Party. He breathed new breath into the soul of the Republican Party. And that's why it's so clearly evident when he does any appearance anywhere that there's more people that he can possibly actually shake hands with, because people are saying, you represent what I want in America, even if it comes in a rough exterior. So that one was for you, Jeff Duncan. Anyway, we're going to continue with our conversation a little bit more straight ahead. We're going to talk about what's going on in the culture with our buddy A.J. Rice. He's coming up next. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night
All right, familia, welcome back. I just want to thank everybody who voted in the People's Choice Podcast Awards for the podcast of this program. We have made the final slate, and I'm grateful to all of you. We'll know, I think, around the 22nd of September whether the program won or not. So keep your fingers crossed and keep trying to vote, right? I think that's what the saying, vote early, vote often. Otherwise, it's rigged, I tell you. Anyway, I'm looking at this story my producer sent me. It's about an actress named Sandra Bullock. I like Sandra Bullock, in as much as anybody could like Sandra Bullock. I've never met her. But she played the role of Leanne Toohey, Tuohy, Toohey. It's kind of funny to say that. I'm sure I'm saying it wrong, but it's fun to say it that way. And Sandra Bullock did a great job as an actress, at least by her peers in the Academy of Motion Pictures, and they awarded her an Oscar for her role in the film Blind Side. It's based on a true story, and the person that she played in the movie in real life turned out to be not as nice of a person as she portrayed that person to be, Leanne Toohey, in the film. So now users on Twitter are ablaze. They've gone apoplectic saying, you know what, we have to demand that the Academy revoke this Oscar and that she give it back. And I thought, if this isn't the height of stupidity in cancel culture and wokeism, I don't know what is. And it's just crazy to think. And again, I'm not defending Hollywood here, but you've got to just put your thinking cap on for a second, right? And say, hold on a second. So you tell me this woman was hired as an actress. She does her job as an actress. She wins this Oscar because of her acting ability and her peers recognizing it through their professional association, similar to what I'm doing now with this podcast award for the podcast of this program, the People's Choice Podcast Award. And, to think that if somebody were to say, because somebody portrayed you or because you did a story on somebody and that person was a D-bag, then you should lose your award because we didn't really like your talent. We liked it then, but we don't like it now because of that person. It makes no sense at all. But that is where we are as a culture. And it's lamentable to see that this is happening in our culture without anybody calling it out. But that's why we've got the editor-in-chief of the Publius Post with us today. And he's the author of a new book called The Woking Dead, How Society's Vogue Virus Destroys Our Culture. A.J. Rice, welcome to the program.
Brother Rich, great to be here. Look at us. We're all grown up. Look at us.
Looking good, brother. And I want to get your take on this, just from what you heard. What do you think of this demanding Sandra Bullock's Oscar back because the person she played in the movie wasn't on the level the way they thought she was?
Well, look, let me just say this. I'm not sure I believe what is coming out now about the Twohy family. So let's start there. This has publicists. This has, Kaepernick era, PR person written all over it. Because I've watched this football player from college to playing for the Baltimore Ravens. I believe he won a Super Bowl with them. I think it was on that team that beat Kaepernick when the power got pulled out during the Super Bowl. I've watched him thank these people his whole life. Thanked him his whole life. This seems like somebody may have gotten to him. I'm not sure this is true. And the craziest thing is just this, I guess, extrapolation where Sandra Bullock is somehow her performance. First of all, you have to believe the accusation. Then you have to sort of extrapolate and say, well, Sandra Bullock might have somehow knew that her fake job when she's pretending to be someone, that the woman that she was pretending to be was really, full of crap. I mean, it's insane. She should laugh at them. I hope she's not out in front of the Chinese theater in West Hollywood tomorrow, giving some press conference about this. But you never, Rich brother, you never know with some of these Hollywood types. I hope she ignores it. It's outrageous. Obviously, the woke kooks out there, the Woking Dead kooks, they're going to call for her scalp. But isn't it amazing? It's almost like, well, if we find out something about, JFK or Lyndon Johnson or Harry Truman or whoever, and,
right,
well, here's a great example. Gary Oldman plays Harry Truman in this Oppenheimer movie, right?
Right.
Now, he didn't win an Academy Award for Harry Truman. He won it for Churchill. But there are people tearing down Churchill statues in England over the last couple of years. A lot of that's in my book. There's people that hate Truman because he dropped 2 nuclear bombs. So I guess now when you're pretending to be a historical figure, if that person didn't live up to, the A+ grading system of DEI and ESG and the 1619 Project and cancel culture, then you get your reward revoked.
Absolute insanity. And you mentioned that this had all the fingerprints of a PR person on it. And for those who are just meeting you for the first time, you are also a PR person in addition to these other things that I mentioned on the way in. What's your story? How did you start out in PR? Did you get into PR? What's it look like for you?
Well, my story is a little bit like yours, brother. I was the executive producer of the Laura Ingraham Show for years. I was on air with her. I was, I started off getting her, coffee. And I ended up the executive producer. So but that's like after working on Capitol Hill. So like from 2005 to like 2010, I worked in radio. I worked with Monica Crowley. I had a investigative news show for John Solomon. I was brought in by Glenn Beck to launch the Blaze Radio Network. And that was about a decade ago. So I was on Capitol Hill for a while. Then I was in radio for a decade. And for the last 10 years, I've been basically doing this, working as a publicist, as a consultant. We do brand management. We promote a lot of books. You guys, put on a lot of our people. We appreciate that. This is a patriotic audience. We love you guys.
Thank you.
So that's the sort of short and sweet of it. And a lot of those same people that I worked with in the past are, current clients. So my day job is, promoting other people, promoting their books, promoting groups. We've got presidential candidates. We've got all kinds. And I'm a columnist myself. Like you said, I'm the author of The Woking Dead. And then I oversee on Substack the Publius National Post. So, I've got irons in the fire all over. But I appreciate you. I know your story. And I think we might have met once or twice at Talkers Convention years ago. So, bravo. Congratulations on the show, sir.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. And I want to jump into the book in the next segment. I really want to dig into it because I know it's not always easy to go from behind the scenes to in front of the scenes. But it makes it a lot easier when you know behind the scenes and how they work. So let me remind the audience, we're on with A.J. Rice. He's the editor-in-chief of the Publius Post, and he's the author of The Woking Dead, How Society's Vogue Virus Destroys Our Culture. And I'm really looking forward to getting into this. And I want to encourage everybody listening, pick up a copy of the book. It's still just mid-August right now, so you've got a couple more weeks of sun. I recommend picking up 2 copies. Get one for yourself, one to give to somebody else to enjoy for summer reading. Check that out wherever you get your books. And straight ahead, we're going to continue with A.J. Rice. And if you want to join the conversation, feel free. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. There is more to come. Stay right here. Don't move a muscle because we're coming right back. I'm Rich Valdez.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, we're on with A.J. Rice, and he's got a brand new book, The Woking Dead, How Society's Vogue Virus Destroys Our Culture. A.J. Rice, what possessed you to write a book about the Vogue virus destroying our culture, and what is that?
Well, Rich, it's funny. I watch Elon out there calling wokeism the woke mind virus. And I'm hoping he's got a hold of my book, and that's where he got it from, because
I'm sure
during the COVID lockdown, I sent one over in a Tesla. So, during the lockdown, it occurred to me that while they were sort of holding us in place with their what I like to call their authoritarian dress rehearsal. There was another virus afoot, and wokeism's kind of like Baskin and Robbins. It's got a lot of different sort of flavors. At this point, it's the Crayola 64 box. You have the Me Too movement, right? You've got cancel culture, 1619 Project. You got Antifa acting as foot soldiers, and obviously you've got who I like to call the trans mafia, who are letting Gary and Steve into the women's locker room. So you have a lot of different aspects of this under this sort of woke umbrella. It's become sort of this evolving sort of group of our worst people. But if there is a unified theory of woke, I would say that what you're fighting in pretty much all of those instances is cultural Marxism. So, they with the Me Too movement, especially if you're talking about younger people, younger millennials. I'm an older millennial. I'm a geriatric millennial, as I like to call myself. With Gen Z in particular, with Gen Z, they are really captured by this. And one of the things I like to say is millennials, for all the crap we get from Gen X and the boomers, the one thing that drove us is purpose. Now, sometimes the purpose was dopey. Sometimes the purpose was taking pictures of your food and putting it on Instagram. But purpose is a noble pursuit. It's like, well, I'm not going to sit here because, for 50 years so I can collect a pension. Or I'm not going to sit in your cubicle and rot away. I'm going to go, be a tour guide in Machu Picchu or wherever. And people do it. Or I'm going to join the military. I mean, I've got a million stories of it. Now, with Gen Z, however, it's very different. They're not driven by purpose. They seem to be driven by identity. The irony, of course, is that they don't really have one. That's why they're so confused. They have a hard time being authentically human. So I get into a lot of these different sort of flavors of wokeism, obviously using the zombie metaphor of The Walking Dead. And, look, there's a lot of humor in the book. There's a lot of horror. But, that's the definition of comedy, is to transform, right, horror into humor, right? Tragedy plus time. So, we have fun in the book. But as we were locked down, your question, why did I write it? Step out from behind the curtain, right? I couldn't take it anymore. I mean, everything that we hold dear, from our sports to our entertainment, was under attack, and it still is. So this is my sort of fun way to push back.
Outstanding. And folks, again, I want to remind you, we're on with A.J. Rice. He's the editor-in-chief of the Publius Post. That's on Substack. And the author of the brand new book, get 2 copies, by the way, The Walking Dead, How Society's Vogue Virus Destroys Our Culture. And you're pointing out a lot of things that, we talk about very often, and you're doing it very eloquently and humorously, which is great. But while you add some humor to it, these really aren't funny things, right? These are very serious things that we're dealing with. And those of us that are parents, many of us are really scared because we're like, man, if this is how bad it is right now, imagine what our kids are going to have to go through, or even worse, our grandkids. How do you see this progressing? Do you think it gets better? Do you think people start to say, you know what, I think I've had enough. I don't like the way this goes, and I'm going to do something about it?
Yeah, look, send a memo to Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. There is an insurrection afoot in America, and it's not the J6 one. It's parents. The irony, of course, they sent all these kids home. Parents got sent home. And while they're at home, boom, they're looking through the textbooks. They see Michelle Obama and Farrakhan and Oprah 50 times, and they see no Thomas Jefferson, no Paul Revere, no Rich Valdez. They don't see any of it. So, and that's one thing that came out of the lockdown, was parents starting to pay attention a little more. This is why you've seen some of these little mini eruptions around the country, right? You saw school boards being taken over. Like Miami-Dade County was taken over by conservatives last year. So it is happening. And look, you and I, we can host all the shows we want, write all the books. But it's like, don't ever look to Washington, D.C. to save you. You got to save your own community. You got to go in, whether it's a school board or a borough council, and you got to fight back. Go in there, wear a GoPro camera, and speak your mind. And, send the video to Rich. He'll play it on the air. That's what you have to do. You have to take back. You have to make a stand because, the government's not going to save you. I mean, you think Kevin McCarthy's coming to save us from wokeism? I don't think so. So, Mitch McConnell, I mean, come on. So it's not happening. Foghorn Leghorn's coming. Who's coming? So, look, you that's what you have to do. That's the panacea to this. Try not to get arrested when you do it, right? But and just educate your kids. Educate your kids. I mean, look, we all have the ability to vote with our wallet, right? I'm not against canceling anyone, but we can decide where our commerce goes, right? So if we're going to give our paycheck to Coors and Miller instead of Budweiser because they have some kind of trans character jumping up and down in a bathtub with a bunch of Bud Light pounders, we can make those decisions, right? So if the NBA wants to lick the boots of the communist Chinese, we can make those decisions. If Disney, wants to, pump us full of, either sort of black supremacy stuff or trans stuff in their movies, look, there's a million. The great thing about millennials is that we've given all of you, boomers and Gen Xers who like to sit around streaming shows, we've given all of you a million options to choose from. So there's not just 3 options anymore. You have more variety than ever for your entertainment and your sports. So just, vote with your wallet.
Well put. Folks, we're on with A.J. Rice, author of The Woking Dead, How Society's Vogue Virus Destroys Our Culture. A.J. Rice, I want you to stick around for another segment. I want to continue to dig into the book, and I have a couple of more questions for you. America, if you want to join the conversation, if you have a question, feel free to give us a call, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
So there's this disastrous inferno running through Hawaii. They're calling it a wildfire. And yet here we are in America with not a literal, but a figurative wildfire running rampant through our American culture. And that's why we're talking to A.J. Rice. He's the author of The Woking Dead, How Society's Vogue Virus Destroys Our Culture. A.J. Rice, how do you see these culture wars affecting the upcoming election?
Yeah, I mean, look, the listeners of this show are going to have to act as the vaccines for this because, Dr. Fauci ain't coming to save us. I can tell you that. It's funny. I like to say that we are dealing with right now 4 tyrannies. And, some of them predate the golden elevator ride by Trump. But, the cultural tyranny is the Woking Dead. We've sort of outlined who they are. We can do a deeper dive if you want. I would say that the medical tyranny is the COVID lockdowns, where they sort of put us through, a pain threshold test to see how much we would take before we, shouted uncle. When you look at 2 phony impeachments and 4 phony indictments of Donald Trump, and you watch the sort of executive branch and the legislative branch, the judicial branch working together to put this man in a vice, I've never seen a politician hunted like this, ever.
Me either.
Other than the ones that were shot. I mean, we're witnessing sort of the passion of the Trump here. And then, of course, apparently Bidenomics. So this is the 4th tyranny. So you have an economic tyranny, which is Bidenomics. You've got a political one, which are these indictments, the hunting of Trump, going through Melania's underwear drawer at Mar-a-Lago. Cultural one from the Woking Dead, and, of course, the medical one that, look, if they can figure out a way to lock us down again and hit us with another one of these things, they will. They never had so much power over us. And anytime you give a bunch of totalitarians that kind of power, it's really hard to get it back from them, which is what, you're fighting for and I'm fighting for and all of our friends out there that, are in the patriotic media. So, I mean, look, when you look at the top three guys that are leading in the polls on the Republican side, and I would even say with RFK Jr. to some extent, because, my firm has some ties to him. My firm has ties to Donald Trump. My firm has ties to Vivek Ramaswamy, and then you have DeSantis. Those four guys who are all leading, who are all scaring people, who are all having little, spikes in the polls, they're all the anti-woke guys for the most part. Or might I add, they're the four guys pushing back on the four tyrannies I just outlined. So I'm not shocked, especially on the Republican side, I'm not shocked that Vivek and DeSantis and Trump are leading, because their entire brand is wrapped up in pushing back on woke culture and the woking dead. So bravo, gentlemen.
Well put. So when people go to, first, where do they go to get a copy of the book?
Look, I'm selling them out of an Oldsmobile along 95 down here. You can get it. Look, you can get them anywhere. If you don't like Amazon, go to Books A Million. They're kind of conservative. Barnes and Noble has them. And other. I mean, there's a lot of retailers online. It's distributed by Simon and Schuster, so it is available a lot of places. So, and everybody has different prices. So, shop around. I can eat some ramen noodles if you can find a deal. So go out, find yourself a copy. But look, it's more about getting copies to your neighbors, to your friends, and look, have a good time with it. It's a series of vignettes. It's kind of like an anthology. It's broken down into 10 sections, and I cover a lot of different. I cover sports and culture. The culture, comedy, and politics. Joe Biden's in the first section. I call him. He's the leader of the woking dead. He's the reanimated corpse, if you will, the leader, sort of shuffling about in his onesie at night. Jill's leading him to his tapioca pudding.
Love that. That's terrific. Now, A.J. Rice, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you and follow the work that you're doing?
Well, look, PubliusPR.com. And we're on pretty much every handle, either under A.J. Rice or under Publius PR. My day job is to bring a lot of informative patriots to shows like this. And whether it's, foreign policy, immigration, the culture, politics, you can find me pretty much anywhere. I'm on all the major platforms, everything from Twitter to Rumble to even TikTok. So, yeah, PubliusPR.com, A.J. Rice. And there is a website for the book. It's thewokingdeadbook.com.
Outstanding. Well, listen, brother, when I write a book, I'm coming to you. Looks like you got all the bases covered. Folks, check them out.
We'll get you out there, brother.
Yes, sir. thewokingdeadbook.com, and follow him on all of the social media. You won't be disappointed. A.J. Rice, I want to thank you for being here. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, and you're pretty funny, so that's a plus.
Hey, you're a patriot. Look, congratulations on the show. We'd love to be back. Keep fighting, brother.
Thanks, man. Godspeed to you. Folks, and when we return, your calls and more, plus some of the crazy that's going on today that we haven't had a chance to jump into. So keep it locked right here. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Yeah, definitely recommend getting a copy of that book. It sounds like a really fun read. And I want to jump into some other stuff. because, of course, President Biden, Joe El Baboso Biden, as we affectionately call him on this program, he, yesterday, I think it was yesterday, early yesterday, maybe it was the day before. Everything is a blur. You got to forgive me. I have time blindness, if you remember that segment that we did. But the reporters asked him, you're sending another $24 billion to Ukraine. What are you going to do at Hawaii? And he said no comment. And I think that was stupid. Really, really a bad move. For an experienced politician like Joe Biden, if he didn't have a comment, he should have stayed quiet, waved, and kept walking. They'll never report on that, right? They'll never go, because they'll be like, oh, maybe he had to go, he had a big meeting, whatever. He waved to the crowd and he walked by. It's kind of innocuous, right? It's like, oh, he didn't answer. But when you actually stop and say no comment, that's like, hey, go F yourself, right? It's like, I'm not answering. And it's just bizarre that he actually did that, and then, of course, he had to double back and say that he's actually going to go. So following up on his no comment, he was in Milwaukee today, and now he's finally decided to say that he's going to go to Hawaii as soon as he can. He just doesn't want to get in the way. And listen, I'll give him that one, right? Maybe not my word choice, but here's what Joe El Baboso Biden had to say. Check this out.
FEMA search and rescue teams are sifting through the ashes in that 5-mile area that you've seen on television has been burned. It's painstaking work. It takes time, and it's nerve-wracking. Most of the debris can't be removed until it's done. My wife Jill and I are going to travel to Hawaii as soon as we can. That's what I've been talking to the governor about. I don't want to get in the way. I've been to too many disaster areas, but I want to go and make sure we got everything they need. I want to be sure we don't disrupt the ongoing recovery efforts.
Is it just me? Really, is it just me, or is it my own bias towards Biden? Or is it fair? Was that a fair statement? I don't know. I'm critical of this because I feel like he didn't give reassurance, right? This was about him. There are people that are dead, like a whole lot of people. What was it, 99 and counting? People that have been, I saw one video, again, it could have been fake, but I saw a video of a girl said she's trapped in her house or her parents' house. Her house was completely disintegrated. I think when you're president, whether you like it or not, you have a responsibility to put your best foot forward, to put your big boy pants on and say, hey, look, I understand your pain. I can't really relate to it. I've never been through that. I can only imagine how bad things are for you. But you know what? We're with you. We're going to put the full power of the federal government to do everything that we possibly can to help each and every one of you and to make sure that your families are taken care of, those that have survived this tragedy. But I didn't hear any of that empathy, and this is the guy, or at least Jill, who said, empathy is on the ballot. Really? Is empathy on the ballot? This fool who's got no comment and then says maybe we'll do $700 in checks and stimulus or whatever it is they're planning on doing. He's giving money all over the place to other things. And again, I'm not saying that the Ukraine money can be sent here. I mean, foreign policy money, I guess they could do some sort of diversion, but I understand how budgets work, right? They would use FEMA budget money. That's already done for that. Bottom line is Biden needs to not be so tone deaf and reach out to the people in Hawaii and stop making this look like it's just a normal thing. It's not a normal thing. Anyway, we continue our conversation. We're going to talk more Biden, student loan debt, and that scheme. That's coming up next, so don't go anywhere. 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't move a muscle. We're just getting started. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez with an S, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be here with you tonight, Tuesday night, hour number 2 of the program. If you're just tuning in, welcome. Our phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And a couple of things, right? So Trump is now firing back on the latest charges, saying there will be a complete exoneration. Then, this story was out a while ago, but it's back in the news today. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says she ate shrooms. Yep, hallucinogenic mushrooms on her trip to China. I think we talked about it when it happened, but I'm happy to talk about this again at the top of the next hour because I think that's just a funny story. Maybe that's why she makes the decisions that she makes and the things that she says pending regarding our economy, rather. And Trump has been ordered to surrender by August 25th with his Georgia case to have his mugshot taken. We can expect a bump in the polls and fundraising dollars when that happens. And, of course, there's some Hunter Biden news. One of his lawyers is now moving to withdraw from the case. Now, you know, that's a pretty bad look when your lawyer's like, look, I don't think I can defend you anymore. This is like a little too much. So we'll get to what his story is on that. And Joel Baboso Biden, right? President Biden, we know he had his student loan scheme, and he got checked on it, and the court said, no, can't do that. You can't do that. So he went back to the drawing board, figured out another way to expand the public service loan forgiveness and to turn this into a $39 billion bailout for student loans. And now there are some think tanks that are filing a lawsuit to block the Biden administration and their plan to cancel these $39 billion in student loans. And this is an interesting thing. So I want to jump into this with Anthony Russo. He's a political analyst, and he's the host of the Truth Will Set You Free podcast. Anthony Russo, welcome to the program.
How you doing?
Wonderful, thanks. So let's dig into this a little bit because I think a lot of people have questions on this, and I think most people, you know, if they have student loans, they're like, yeah, that sounds good. I would love that. And I think other people are saying, hey, I didn't even go to college. Why am I paying off somebody else's college loan bill? And this is a lawsuit now that was filed by a couple of think tanks. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I could not be a bigger opponent against student loan forgiveness than I don't think there is anybody. And that's one of the things I've rallied against for the last 3 years, actually further than that now, because that's been a speaking point of the Democratic Party to try to buy votes since midway through the Trump presidency, as much as it seems like lunacy to say, let's just forgive all loans. What's interesting is I actually was on the radio a little bit about this last week talking about this exact same, topic. And I came to the conclusion that one of the people asked me, one of the radio hosts asked me, he said, well, who's actually getting forgiven in these? And I was looking at the $38 billion as opposed to the hundreds of billions that were in the original plan that Biden gave an executive order that got shot down, of course, because it's unconstitutional. And this is unconstitutional as well. However, I didn't know how to answer the question. I actually didn't know who was getting forgiven. So after I was on that show, I did a little bit more research, and it's not, I can't believe I'm saying this, it's not the worst direction in the world. It's not the Band-Aid on the problem. The thing is, there's one major problem that we're not addressing the actual current issues. There's nobody looking at how much student loans are being taken out, how the student loan debt is increasing year after year, how the egregious prices for college. Nobody's looking at that. And that's how you fix the actual problem. If you want to put a Band-Aid on it, this actually isn't a terrible Band-Aid if it wasn't coming from taxpayers, if they were negotiating it from those that were giving out the loans and the interest and even the universities. This $39 billion, though, is helping those that have spent 20 out of 25 years paying off their loans, so they're at the tail end. They've done everything right, and they've just been destroyed by interest payments over that time, and they've been responsible. And then those that are making less than $10, $15 or $10 an hour or $1,000 a week, their payments are on hold, or they actually don't have to eventually pay them off. I can see a little bit of the point in that, as long as it's not other taxpayers doing that. They should be negotiating those off of people that have gouged. Instead, it's just leaving to the deficit. And then there's the two think tanks that have come in, and I believe one of those is from Wharton, one of them is from, one is Michigan, Mackinac. Mackinac. They're in the north, and these two think tanks are obviously filing an injunction and a lawsuit to try to stop this. However, it's already been done. Like, people are already getting the letters, and some of their loans have already been forgiven. I actually know people that have gotten the whole, you don't have to pay the rest of your 5 years off. So that's the current status of this whole thing. But I can say, as somebody that's just absolutely against any kind of student loan forgiveness, this one wouldn't be the end of the world if it was being executed properly with a future plan.
Now, I think the big question a lot of people have is if there is a $39 billion collective debt and the government's using the word forgiveness, meaning the person doesn't have to pay it back, does that mean that someone else has to pay it back, that it's eventually going to get paid back? And I think this is the big question where people are saying, where is it going to come from? The government has purchased these loans and owns these loans. It's not like they're paying back other banks. I think they've already taken over those banks during the Obama years, and these loans were made by their Department of Education loans, many of them. So where do you see this one going? Do you think it's going to be a similar outcome where they go to court and they say, yeah, you can't do that, that's not within your scope? Or does he get over on this by saying, no, this is within my scope, this was a decision made at an executive branch agency where we're just readjusting our regulations on how we forgive debt?
So as the injunction's filed, there's already going to be billions that'll slip through the cracks before that, or not filed, but before they actually reach a decision. I do think it's going to end up being deemed unconstitutional. I think we're going to have a very similar situation as the other one that was struck down. But I didn't, until I started really researching this, there's been billions that have already been forgiven while the interim process of court proceedings. Once certain people have already had their loans forgiven, it actually, they can't go back. Like, they could tell people, like, hey, we're forgiving your loan. That doesn't mean anything. But people are actually getting phone calls by those that work in the federal government or work for the Department of Education federally. They're getting phone calls saying, this loan has been forgiven. And once it's wiped, it's wiped. So the money's already being spent. To kind of answer your last comment, the money is not coming from, it's confusing, and it's kind of clickbait for the conservative side, and then the Democrats get to say, oh, that's not true, and it's somewhere in the middle. It's not actually coming out of the taxpayers' taxes per se, because they're using kind of a slush fund is the best way to look at it. The federal government has a whole bunch of areas, the Department of Education has a bunch of areas they could just pull money from. So they're using money that could be earmarked for other places, and in the end, the way that the quote-unquote taxpayer pays for this is through inflation, because our deficit is so beyond out of control. So is there a whole, hey, this is costing you $350 a year or something like that? Not really. It is more an inflationary process, but it's not something that's needed, especially since if you're going to punish somebody in order to help the situation, it should be directed towards those that have been profiteering for too long. And ultimately, like I was just like the original question you had on this is, I do think this will be stopped, because there's really nothing different except for this is more of a sob story. There's nothing different in this argument, I guess you could say.
Yeah, well, I what they positioned it as, the difference was, this wasn't executive action from the White House. This was a retooling of an existing student loan forgiveness that they had, like the public service loan forgiveness, and they just expanded it for multiple people, is how I understood it. And that was something that's been around for, 20 years or something. So they're saying that was how they were able to finagle this. And I think that's what's slipping through the cracks right now. I don't know if everybody's going to qualify, and I guess once it goes to court, they might say, okay, well, maybe they're not public service, and I think that's what they're doing. They're expanding that definition. Like, did you ever do an internship for any government agency or a social work agency or anything that fits that criteria? Okay, you're in. And that's how they were kind of qualifying it from what I've read. So definitely interesting. Folks, we're on with Anthony Russo, and he is the host of the podcast. Make sure you check it out and subscribe. The Truth Will Set You Free. And we're going to come back with him with a little bit more insight from him, so don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And our guest, Anthony Russo, political analyst and host of The Truth Will Set You Free. And I know you've done a couple of shows recently that are pretty cool. Looking at this one here, recent program you did, Our Country is Racist as Heck, for real. Tell us about that.
I like to do a little clickbait. One of my most watched shows recently was when I actually said Trump is going down, and that was after the third indictment. And it was in quotes, but man, did it get the ultra Trumpers fired up, telling me I'm a terrible person, you're an idiot, all these different things. It's so sometimes I do stuff to try to get people to watch it, and then hopefully they watch the rest of the show and learn. Some of the people on that one didn't. The racist one was regarding, gosh, was that last week or 2 weeks ago? It was involving the fact that we bring race into everything. And it was actually not the way people think. And God, what was there's so many news stories every week, but there was a big racial story last week, and it was involving the fact that really the true racists are the lefties. That was the big thing, is we're creating a racist environment by essentially deeming everybody that is it's the way that they looked at any black person that cannot have an opinion if it is not that of what a ultra liberal would have. So that was the whole point, is that racism is prevalent in this society, but it's coming from the wrong direction. Likewise, there is those that are that's right. It was a Texas teacher was another story from Texas that was fired because she was admitting how she disliked white people so incredibly much, and she was a elementary school teacher in Texas, and she posted all about it until finally she got fired. She hated the fact that her sister brought home a white guy and just went ballistic on it. So that was what that was about. A little bit of clickbait to get people engaged in the conversation involving racism, racism is not getting any better. I will be honest. And I think that goes both ways. And there's a reason for it. We as a society have adopted this unfortunate view of black culture that's from things that are modern day hip hop, which is complete garbage. And we ignore the positives of the black community because we celebrate the negatives, and it's created this whole you have to think one way and you have to abide by every rule and say that all black people are good no matter if they're criminals or not, and that's creating, I think, some of those people that have been racist, that have their families, generational racism that slowly but surely went away through the 60s, 70s, 80s, and then 2000s. I think it's starting to come back the pendulum swinging the other direction because of the way that the culture is portrayed, whether it's in mainstream media or whether it's just the situation at hand, what's going on social media.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I see things from a slightly different perspective, in so much as I think hip hop is a billion-dollar industry, and it's made a lot of billionaires and millionaires, and made a great life for a lot of people who've come up through hip hop music. But I get what you're saying. The message sometimes is a derogatory one and whatnot, and you're right. I think there's a lot of emphasis on looking at the negative aspects of any culture versus the positive aspects, and trying to pit people against one another. And that seems to be the new trend, right? It's like, if you're right, if you're white, you're wrong. If you're Latino and you're against illegal immigration, you're a sellout. And there seems to be such a racial animus that underscores every societal and cultural topic nowadays, that people feel like that they're compartmentalized into one group or another. And this is the very essence of a cultural Marxist revolution that we've seen in China and elsewhere. And I just find it interesting that's happening right before us. Some people notice, a lot of people are talking about it, but nobody really seems to care. They just kind of go with the flow. And like you said, it seems to be getting worse, whether it's racism, whether it's discrimination based on gender or whatever. The fact that all of these things are front and center. Yesterday, and I don't even know if it was real, but I saw a Skittles wrapper. It might have been a prototype. I haven't seen it in a store, but it said something like Black Trans Lives Matter on a Skittles wrapper. With
No, that's real.
Playing. Yeah, there you go. Right, and I saw that. And
it's real. It's at Walmart.
Wow, right? And this was sent to me by somebody that is extremely apolitical. that knows me from like my real life outside of radio and doesn't even listen to the show, right? All they know is he's like some sort of Republican that talks on the radio, right? But they sent this to me because they have a child, and they were like, this seems weird. Like, why are we having this type of messaging on candy that's targeted to kids?
It's odd.
And so regular people that are, again, they're just not engaged, they're realizing this, and I got to think, that's not working for the left, or is it?
No, it's not working for the left, and it's because the reason why it's fueling the far left. But like you said, somebody that really doesn't have a political bone, in their body, is reaching out, knowing what you do. The center is starting to see the lunacy in some of this, and I remembered exactly what the lead story we were talking about. It was the Mississippi Melee. It was on the Montgomery or Mississippi or Montgomery. I can't remember. It was the riverboat fight, and how it became a white and black, sharks and jets type situation. And that was the thing. People were celebrating. And this is how the media drives that division and that wedge between people in America. But it was really it was the fact that these fights happen all the time. But the fact that a bunch of black people and a bunch of white people got together, and it ended up being this major fight, and the black people won. And the way on social media, some of the influencers, like a Hawk Newsom, that's the head of Black Lives Matter in New York, said this is their Independence Day. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me right now. You can't celebrate this horrific behavior. Like, you don't see a bunch of, if you ever saw a white person on social media go, yeah, this group of white people beat up this group of black people. Like, how horrid would that be? And it's not just hip hop culture. It is that mentality that these are the leaders, these are the thought leaders in that group, unfortunately, that are getting the press. And it's how you strategically divide a group of people. And it's been done through the mainstream media for decades, and now social media is just making it worse. And it's an unfortunate place that we're in, because this is just as big of a problem as anything else we could talk about, whether it be vaccines or mandates or, the presidential issues, not covering Hunter Biden, only covering Trump's 4 ridiculous indictments. But the racial aspect is how you continue to make sure you pit people against each other. And it's a pretty big master plan, if you ask me, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Well put. Now, I want people to know where they can check out your program. Anthony Russo, let them know how they can hear The Truth Will Set You Free.
Yeah, best place to find me is Truth Will Set You Free USA on all the major social media networks. Instagram and Facebook are our main places, obviously, but it's on all the podcast stations as well. That's the best place, Truth Will Set You Free USA.
Thanks, brother. Folks, that's Anthony Russo with The Truth Will Set You Free. Thanks for being here with us, bro. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir. All right, folks, more to come straight ahead. We're going to talk about cryptocurrency and some of the craziness that's going on there. Very volatile. Don't move a muscle. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And the infamous, right, he now lives in infamy, Sam Bankman-Fried. He used $100 million in stolen FTX funds for political donations. That's according to the U.S. Now, again, that there was an indictment that was thrown out against him the other day, and then they revoked his bail, and now they've added a new indictment saying that he used stolen money for political campaign contributions before the 2022 midterm elections. And this is an amended indictment that accused the 31-year-old billionaire of directing 2 FTX executives to evade contribution limits by donating to Democrats and Republicans to conceal where the money came from. That's called a straw donation. But $100 million, that's big. I know somebody that they claim did this for $12,000, and this guy got arrested, ankle bracelet, the whole 9 yards. Anyway, it says, according to the indictment, he leveraged this influence in turn to lobby Congress and regulatory agencies to support legislation and regulation he believed would make it easier for FTX to continue to accept customer deposits and grow. Bankman-Fried is facing 7 counts of conspiracy and fraud over FTX's collapse through the indictment, and it no longer includes conspiracy to violate campaign finance. That was a separate count, which they threw out and added this new one. So that's the story on that. But in the crypto world, things continue to go up and down, and some are saying Bitcoin's the way to go. I want to check in with somebody who knows what's going on, and that's Christopher Alexander. He's the Chief Analytics Officer at Liberty Blockchain. Christopher Alexander, welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me. How's it going?
My pleasure. Going good. So let's talk about the volatility in Bitcoin. I don't know, maybe last year it was down, and then it went up, and then it goes down, and now it's up a lot in recently. Tell us about it.
Well, it's there's a great website called 99 Coins. It tracks the death of Bitcoin. It tracks the death all the way back to I think 2013. I think the site was brought up around 2015, but you're at about the 400th time now that experts have said that Bitcoin is finished. It's all over. So it's always kind of entertaining to look at that. And when you do look at it, historically over the 10, 13 years, you see this pattern of rising and falling. And so far it's been, almost like clockwork. And so you hit a low of almost, I think, 16,000 just 6-7 months ago. And now it's just about doubled, and it's kind of holding. When we think about why is it holding, I think you've got, of course, BlackRock, you've got Fidelity, and ARK that are all looking to have these funds that you can buy Bitcoin in. And I think everyone's sort of holding their breath, waiting for that to be approved, disapproved, or whatever's going to happen. So you've got a bit of wallets that are distributing and people getting ready to accumulate. And I think you're just in a kind of in between, if you will. That's why the price has been pretty flat for a few months now at about 29,000-30,000.
Now, when we look at cryptocurrency, I guess from the macro perspective, there's a lot of questions that arise with respect to the government trying to get into the digital currency space with the central bank digital currencies, and some people saying, well, they should use Bitcoin because of the blockchain that it uses, and it would be easier for them to use it, but they'd prefer to regulate it and create their own. Do you feel like they're pushing the CBDC as a way to rival or not use Bitcoin, or is there something else altogether?
Well, it's been so generally for CBDCs, China, India, Russia, by the way, all BRICS countries, very interested, which makes me wonder if they're not looking at kind of a CBDC play for BRICS. But there's been a really interesting development this week that really wasn't covered and kind of buried. If you're maybe with the FedNow system that they just brought up kind of July, August, kind of buried in FedNow is actually, and forgive me, I can't remember if they're going to test it and bring it online, or they're planning to bring it online, but they're actually going to include USDC coins, which are backed by Circle, which is essentially a private stable coin, as part of the FedNow system. So it seems like, and perhaps this is proposed, but it was in the FedNow documentation. We were looking at it, our blockchain, and kind of stunned by this. It seems that perhaps the Fed, in their view of how to use cryptocurrency, and the SEC's view of it as a security and minus Bitcoin there, and perhaps even the administration's view may not be entirely aligned. But we were just honestly stunned when we saw that CBDC had been listed by FedNow as a currency they were considering for moving. If that happens, you've kind of got this private sector solution for stablecoin that kind of obviates the need for a U.S. backed CBDC.
And I think something else that would kind of underscore the same point is the fact that what you just mentioned, right? That the BRICS nations are united around a cryptocurrency, and they're growing, right? I see that just today there's some reporting that Morocco has submitted a proposal to be a part of BRICS. And do you see that gaining enough momentum to become a threat to the dollar, or is that too early to to presume?
Well, I can't remember the hard numbers, but BRICS is right about to surpass the U.S. and the G7 allies in terms of their the value or the amount of population and GDP covered behind the economy that each one represents, and so they're not there yet. But I think it's something of a shot across the bow to U.S. and allies that it's time to start treating, I think, our allies more like allies and less like troops or pieces that we're moving around on the chessboard, because they are saying, well, you know what, we're going to explore an alternative. But right. The idea, I mean, on the other side of this, the idea that Brazil, Russia, and China have so much in common culturally, politically, economically, that they're going to really band together with the Saudis, the Iranians, and everyone else, I think is a little unlikely. But what I think BRICS is absolutely becoming is is leverage for countries that are not always thrilled with U.S. economic policy. Right.
And I think I see it the same way, right? For some people, it's just like, well, hey, if you're not going to play ball with us, maybe we'll play ball over here. And I also see it, like you said, as like a warning shot. But I'm always ambivalent to think, is this really a major threat coming our way? The fact that they're holding so much weight with their respective economies, I think is a big deal. And it makes me think, if the U.S. doesn't react with some sort of crypto-backed deal, we would be left behind. And that's always like in the back of my head thinking, it's everything's an arms race, whether it's space or the economy or anything else. And I'm just wondering what that would look like. So what you mentioned with stablecoin makes some sense in how that might turn into something bigger than it is now. I just wonder if this ultimately becomes like a real thing, and how realistic of a thing you think that would become in the future.
Well, aside from just BRICS and a common currency outside of crypto being a concern maybe in a decade, a serious one, on the crypto and blockchain front, China has just returned with a bang back to cryptocurrency. They had banned trade of it, I think, in 2017. And they've allowed Hong Kong to trading to begin through Hong Kong. They've got an ETF, I think, that just already went up for Bitcoin there, and they are trying to build a cryptocurrency and blockchain hub in Hong Kong. And I wouldn't be at all surprised, particularly considering the long-range planning that the Chinese do, that they are building this crypto hub and accumulating this expertise for the very purpose of establishing a Chinese CBDC. So yeah, and I should point out that, cryptocurrency is the byproduct of blockchain, and the technology in blockchain, whether it's supercomputing, to encryption and security, is probably far more important than what you can speculate with on a cryptocurrency exchange. And that's the real national security risk and opportunity for the United States. So, certainly from our perspective, we'd like clear rules, and we'd like to see the U.S. make sure that blockchain development continues, because this technology has just scores of applications and could very much be a huge part of transforming how we do things in the future.
I want to pull on that thread with China a little bit more, but first we're going to take a quick pause. Folks, if you have a question for Christopher Alexander, Chief Analytics Officer at Liberty Blockchain, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
My hands across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, welcome back. And just a reminder, at the top of the next hour, we've got Open Phone America, where you can call in on any topic. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you guys from all across the nation. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And we continue our conversation on cryptocurrency with Christopher Alexander, the Chief Analytics Officer of Liberty Blockchain. And Christopher Alexander, I want to ask you, we were talking about China a little bit, and if you, just for a moment, put on your geopolitical hat. I know China, crypto's not legal in China, but Binance has a lot of people there and seems to be doing some business there. And you mentioned that, they're moving into to Hong Kong, and it seems like China has their fingerprints on a lot of things, making a play to try to dominate or control the move. And I'm just wondering, how would that play out with their colleagues in the BRICS alliance?
So China's reasoning at the time that they banned crypto trading was that they wanted to protect their legacy banking system. And I think that, so starting from the internal and moving it external. So I think, that fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, coincided with that massive run up to about 64,000 for Bitcoin. And I think you had a lot of people who had wanted to trade in the markets that were pretty unhappy that they basically had to either give up or move their Bitcoin around or weren't able to accumulate more during that run. So, just a few months ago, kind of out of the blue, they said, all right, we're going to open Hong Kong up. And, typically Hong Kong and Macau have been how people in the mainland have moved the money out regardless of whether there were restrictions or not. So it's kind of a way for China to have it both ways. They can protect their banking system, but, the people who have enough money to matter can get involved. So internally, they're always going to look after, as any country, right, their interests first. But
right.
with BRICS, what becomes interesting is if they accumulate a lot of Bitcoin in the next year ahead of the likely approval, it sounds like now they're going to wait till 2024 and approve everyone all at once, so no one gets an advantage in the U.S. in accumulating Bitcoin. But I just saw a number for the U.S. Entities, probably 10% of all the Bitcoin will be accumulated by them that's in existence. So does China, therefore, going back to China, do they therefore get a head start on this, take advantage of the likely rise that'll happen in Bitcoin, and then underwrite other BRICS countries, or have the economic leverage to bring more people into the BRICS alliance? I think that's perhaps what gives them some power and potential authority that they wouldn't have had in the past within BRICS, understanding that it's mostly theirs anyways, right? But I do believe that could have a major impact in terms of their CBDC or joint CBDC. It's interesting that so many BRICS countries are all developing one. It doesn't sound like they have a coordinated or joint framework for BRICS itself. So, I think that remains to be seen, but, it would make sense that you sort of have the, petrodollar, if you will, from one of the BRICS countries that is one of their CBDCs, and it kind of becomes the, the coin of the realm, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think that's really where I was angling, was I don't see China getting involved in something to be a passive participant. I think if they get involved, it's their game, or they're not in the game at all, whether it's BRICS or not. That's just my take. So I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Now, Christopher Alexander, for everybody that's listening and wants to learn more about Liberty Blockchain and the work that you're doing, where do they go?
Go to libertyforall.org. That's with the number 4, libertyforall.org. And we are a blockchain dedicated to a free and open society. Our chain just came online, and we're developing applications like a Learn to Earn history program, where people can visit the Liberty Bell and actually receive digital rewards for it as part of this Learn to Earn program. And we're looking at some other capabilities as well that again, support free and open society. So definitely hope people check that out.
Sure. Liberty, the number 4all.org. Liberty, the number 4.org, for all.org. Christopher Alexander, thanks for the insight. Great conversation. I really appreciate it. Thanks for staying up late with us.
Great. Thank you.
You bet. All right, folks, there is more to come straight ahead. Open Phone America is coming. We're just moments away from that. Your calls and more after this.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, welcome back. And listen to this. This is CBS News reporting that the New Jersey Supreme Court has ruled in favor of a Catholic school that fired an unwed pregnant teacher. Now, her gripe was that she became pregnant while unmarried and was fired, and she felt that she was being discriminated against. And this case goes back to 2014. Victoria Cristiello began working at St. Teresa School in Kenilworth, New Jersey, as a toddler room caregiver back in 2011. She was approached for a full-time job in 2014, and court documents coincide with that. During a meeting with the school, the principal said, that she was pregnant. Several weeks later, she was told she'd violated the school's code of ethics, which required employees to abide by the teachings of the Catholic Church, and lost her job. Cristiello filed a complaint against the school alleging employment discrimination in violation of New Jersey's law against discrimination, which prohibits unlawful employment discrimination based on a number of factors, including an individual's sex, including pregnancy, family status, marital, civil union, religion, etc., etc. But in a unanimous decision, the state Supreme Court ruled the firing was illegal because the law provides for an exception for employers that are religious organizations, allowing those organizations to follow the tenets of their religion in establishing and utilizing criteria for employment. Quote, the religious tenets exception allowed St. Teresa's to require its employees as a condition of employment to abide by Catholic law, including that they abstain from premarital sex, is what the justices ruled. What are your thoughts on this? Should they have fired the unwed teacher at the Catholic school? Yes, no, maybe so. Your calls. I'm looking forward to hearing about it. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. All of that and more straight ahead. It's Rich Valdez, America at Night, and Open Phone America starts right now.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Hour number 3, Tuesday night. Happy to have this conversation with you. Hopefully you'll join our late-night national town hall conversation. Here's the number, 833-482-5337. And I want to talk about a couple of things. I was on Newsmax yesterday. I totally forgot to mention this. And we were discussing this resurfaced letter that Barack Obama has, and I'm going to get to that right after the next break, and we'll talk about that a little bit. I also wanted to get your opinion on what I was just discussing right before the break, and this is an interesting one, right? About the Catholic school teacher, because New Jersey Supreme Court upheld that the school had the right to fire her because she wasn't married and became pregnant, and that was a violation of Catholic doctrine, and she had signed up to subscribe to the Catholic Code of Ethics as an employee at this Catholic school. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts on that. I really are. I would love to hear from America on this, because I think it's, of course I have my own thoughts, but I'm really curious to know, because, it's a tough one to swallow, right? I think for some people it may be cut and dry. Hey, look, you signed up to work at a religious organization. You have to abide by these religious rules because you agree to be, part of that religion, and you violated it, so you're out. And for others, it's like you just ended the employment of a woman that is with child. And how's she going to take care of her kid now, right? And I think there's just so many ways of looking at this, and I'm really, really interested in hearing your thoughts on it. So give me a call, 833-482-5337. And again, I just want to reiterate that story for you because I don't know why. I'm just really interested in it. The Supreme Court in New Jersey sided with the Catholic school that fired a teacher back in 2014 because she became pregnant while she was unmarried. Her name, Victoria Cristiello. She began working at a school named St. Teresa School in Kenilworth, New Jersey. She started working as a caregiver in the toddler room in 2011, and then by 2014, she'd gotten a full-time teaching job teaching art. Now, court documents show that the timeline is accurate, but during a meeting with the school principal about the position, she said that she was pregnant. And several weeks later, she was told she'd violated the school's code of ethics, which required employees to abide by the teachings of the Catholic Church, and she lost her job. So she took them to court. They went to court, and she said that this violates New Jersey's law against discrimination, which prohibits unlawful employment discrimination based on many things, including somebody's sex, marital status, religion, and other things. And part of sex is pregnancy. So, in a unanimous decision, the state Supreme Court in New Jersey ruled that the firing was legal because the law provides an exception for employers that are religious organizations, allowing those organizations to follow the tenets of their religion in establishing and utilizing the criteria for employment in their organization. Now, I really am curious to know your thoughts on this, because, again, she did sign up for that, and I'm just very curious to know where people are at with this. A spokesperson for the New Jersey's Office of the Attorney General said that while the decision was disappointing, the office was grateful for its narrow scope and that it hopefully won't impact the protections in New Jersey's discrimination law for the majority of New Jerseyans. Paul Verniero, an attorney representing the school, said, "We're pleased that the Supreme Court upheld the rights of religious employers to act consistent with their religious tenets, and that the court found that St. Teresa School did so here. Equally important, the court found no evidence of discrimination in this case. This is a significant validation of St. Teresa's rights as a religious employer." Similar cases have been heard at the federal level. In 2020, a decision in Lady of Guadalupe School versus Morrissey, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that certain employees of religious schools couldn't sue for employment discrimination. So tell me, what are your thoughts on this? Let us hit the phones. Let's go to, let's see, we've got calls from Los Angeles, Wilmington, Delaware, Tampa, Florida, and more coming in. I want to go to Doc. Let's go to Doc in Wilmington, Delaware, WDEL. Doc, you're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Rich, I've got to make one point, and I have to ask you two political questions that have nothing to do with what
help me out here, Doc. Yes, let's start with that because I'm so curious. What are your thoughts on this woman being fired for becoming pregnant while working at a Catholic school, Doc?
I'm torn. I've sympathized with her, but I feel that the Catholic Church, I think in my mind and my heart, the Catholic Church is protected by the First Amendment of the Constitution. They can do whatever the heck they want. Any church can, Mormons, anybody, as religious institutions. If you sign on to the Catholic Church or the Mormon Church or any church, you work with them, you have to abide by their rules all the way down. And if you don't, that's just the way it is. I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah. Listen, and that's exactly where I am theoretically. I just like to think, man, if I were in those shoes, like, what would I have done as the manager there, or as the head of school, or whatever it was? Because, it is tough. And I guess probably a good severance and say, hey, look, I'm sorry this is this way. Can you get married quickly? I don't know. It's anything.
Yeah.
Let's fix this. But domestic partnership, get something on, But yeah, you're right. I feel exactly the same way. Anyway, what's going on? What's on your mind tonight, Doc?
Well, I want to ask you a question about two things, both political, because you're an insider. I'm just a grunt. I've been a volunteer in both parties. I'm back with the Republicans for now. May go Democratic because of Ukraine and other issues. I don't know. I'm torn. I love Trump, but I want to ask you about two different personalities, two different parties. If Trump is convicted in any one of these cases, do you think that hurts him or makes him even stronger with the base? And do you see your buddy Chris Christie or somebody else taking on Trump and the Republican Party? Number two, if President Biden has a Mitch McConnell moment and falters physically, do you think that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. can gain traction against President Biden? Your thoughts, sir?
That's a great question. So here's where we're at with that. I believe that Robert F. Kennedy is an insurgent candidate and one that could really appeal to people if he were embraced by the Democrats. And I think if the Democrats were smart, right, I think the move would be what they did with Biden. So I won't preclude that from happening, right? And I think what they did with Biden was they said, look, this guy doesn't have a shot. I think Biden's run for president 9 times, right? And he's never done well. And it was in this last one where Sanders was kind of up, and there was Clinton and or whatever it was that was going on, all these Buttigieg and whatever it was, all those Harris, not Clinton, Harris, and they decided to make a deal, right? Now the party made a deal with him, and they said, all right, we step out of the way. Liz Warren, that's who I was saying, not Clinton, Liz Warren. She was the one at that point. And they made the deal to step aside, given that he would give them some assurances. And they made their negotiation. And I think that would probably be the way, right? If I were the Democrats and I said, how do we beat the Republicans? Because I think the Republicans are in a good place to win, only because you have a guy, Trump, that is, I think he's an excellent candidate, but he's also, they're throwing everything, including the kitchen sink at this guy, and he's still doing well with the base. Now, of course, the base isn't going to win the entire election. In the primary they can, but, the general. So I think I would look at that and say, Trump is a force to be reckoned with. The guy has already proven that he can win. We need to take him seriously. We want to put our best foot forward, and Biden's not our best foot. I think RFK Jr. could potentially be the best foot. I think some would say he's not the most effective communicator. I think others would disagree. But I think he has some appeal. I think there are a lot of Democrats, people that love this country, people that are blue-collar union workers, and they feel abandoned by the Democrat Party. And so many of those people, they're not Republicans. They're like Democrats for Trump, right? This is how they do what they do. So I feel like if the Democrats were smart, they would make a play for Kennedy and say, be our standard bearer, but here's what we need you to do. Now, of course, he's going to come to the table and say, look, the medical tyranny, that stuff's going out the window. These are things he's passionate about. So they've got to give him some of what he's passionate about and come to an agreement where now they're in a place where they can say, all right, here's our guy, RFK Jr. The Kennedy era continues. And I think there would be some gravitas to that. The other side of that question is Trump, I don't see him faltering and going against Christie or anybody. I think Chris Christie is a skilled politician, but I don't know that he's brought a ton of energy even to his campaign right now. It almost seems like he's acting as a prosecutor, and he's prosecuting Trump in the court of public opinion. It seems like his sole job is to just give Trump a black eye each and every time he sees him. And so if that was his goal, he's achieving it, I guess, or at least he's trying to, he's doing his job. Whether it's working or not is a different story, but he stays on the attack. I think DeSantis is trying to make a name for himself, trying to separate himself from the crowd. But again, his views are somewhat Trumpian. And if you're running against a guy who already had those policies, it's going to, again, be hard to create that contrast where people will say, well, why should I choose you if Trump's already here? And you're like, supporting the same types of policies as Trump. So I think it's not enough to get the needle moved. But again, that could change. We're only in August. It's not even after Labor Day where this stuff really kicks in. So that's that part. Now, I think that maybe Kennedy does become that person, and I wouldn't sleep on the guy. And he would, if he doesn't get accepted by the Democrats, then I think he's great as a splinter candidate, a Ross Perot of sorts, where he just takes people that probably weren't going to vote for Biden anyway, and they're going to vote for him, and it's going to hurt them in my estimation, Doc.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, folks, we're going to continue with your calls. Lots of really good calls. Los Angeles, Tampa, Florida, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Long Island, New York. We're coming your way straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right. We are conducting another session, the Tuesday night session, the Tuesday night edition of Open Phone America, a time-honored tradition here on this program. And we are continuing the conversation with Isaac. He's calling in from Long Island, but listening through WJJF out of Connecticut. Isaac, welcome. You're on with Rich Valdez.
How you doing, Rich? Yeah, I've listened to your show several times. I do like the program, and I want to make 2 points that are very two points of irony here. Jesus would not fire this woman, and we're talking about a religion that believes in the Immaculate Conception.
Let's talk about point number 2 first. What is that? Are you saying because they believe that a virgin got pregnant that it's ironic that they fire a woman for getting pregnant for not being married?
They're making an assumption. In other words, she could be she could be carrying the second coming. Let's just say, just hypothetically, right? I mean,
hypothetically, according to Catholic doctrine, I know a few things about theology, not a ton, but that would be heresy, right? It would literally be a very big deal. So I could see why they wouldn't go with that angle. But the first one, I think, is really interesting because I believe you're accurate, right? I don't think Jesus would fire the woman. I think there's the in the Bible he has this run-in with Mary Magdalene, and they say that she was of ill repute and whatnot, and she thought that he was going to chastise her, and what ends up happening is he says, go and sin no more. And it's the ultimate message of what Jesus brought, which was the forgiveness, and the forgiveness, made eternal through the cross. So, I think that's an excellent point that you bring up, Isaac. And this is one where I think, it's a theological debate, and I don't think, an employee is going to get into a theological debate with the church, and let alone not in a New Jersey state court, but on a ideological perspective, right? Interesting debate for sure. I appreciate the call, Isaac. Thanks for listening to the show. Big shout out to WJJF in Connecticut, which reaches out into Long Island, and I appreciate that. Let us continue here with Jim, Kankakee, Illinois. He had 10 seconds of fame last night on the program. We're going to give you a couple of more seconds tonight, Jim. Thanks for calling back.
Well, it's great to talk to you again, Rich. No kidding. And I really appreciate everybody. I appreciate people that love America and that want to keep America strong and just what it's been for the last 250 years, getting better and better. But anyway, the thing that I wanted to talk about just for a few minutes is I have a way to actually kind of prove the elections. And basically it comes down to this, that we're almost beyond what took place in the 1890s when it was not secret balloting. Now it's been secret balloting. The last state was 1950 that legislated secret balloting. See, today with the internet and everything, everybody knows who I would vote for because of what they could just look at me online. You know what I mean? But aside from that, we have to be able to prove. See, right now you can manipulate everything, and that's where all this confusion has come in. Trump spent $3 million a state trying to take perverted election results and try to make them make sense. When you don't have anybody's credibility on a ballot, when I go in and just sign my name, they give me a ballot and nobody knows whose ballot it's in yet, you can do anything you want. And
so are you saying voter ID? Is voter ID what you're...
voter ID. I've always said that I'm old. And something, I've always had to show my voter ID, and I'd have to sign my name, and everybody knows me anyway in my own community anyway. But the thing is, though, they give me a ballot, and my ballot has no identification for me. And so you can change. You can change the results in the Dominion machines and things like that. 29 states have the Dominion machines, and they were literally proven that they could be manipulated from outside because they were involved with the internet.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. That was, I forget his first name, but the guy Pulitzer, who did that whole study on how you could use Wi-Fi to manipulate the machines. So in order for them to be safe, they have to be turned off to Wi-Fi so they can't be like hacked or whatever. But all that being said, I agree with the principal point here, I think, is voter ID. And I think that is something that every state should choose to embrace. And the fact that they try to shy away from voter ID and with the cheapest excuses. I once heard Kamala Harris, that's right, que mala eres. When I heard her talk about this once and say that, it's racist to insist that someone have ID in order to go vote, I thought this was laughable, and I was offended because, I fall into the category of a person of color, and I always have ID. Right. I mean, these arguments are insane to me that because you are a black or Hispanic or any other type of ethnic minority that you can't possess ID. I think it's laughable and it's insulting. So, Jim, interesting conversation. Great point. I appreciate it. Big shout out to WKAN, Kankakee, Illinois. Jim, I appreciate you, brother. Folks, we're coming right back with the rest of your calls and more right here on America at Night with me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
Valdez, who again will do a fine job, but I know you'll enjoy listening to it.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, folks, welcome back. Familia, we are going down south now. Tampa, Florida, WWTK. Edward, you're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Yeah, Rich, first-time caller, and I've been listening for a long time because I know you used to fill in for Mark Levin. So.
Oh, cool. Thank you, Edward. I'm glad to speak with you.
Yeah,
what's on your
mind?
mind?
To a lot of different shows. Yeah, I like to listen to a lot of different shows, especially after COVID. I've been aiming at LA and New York. I used to live in Chicago, but now I'm in Tampa as of May. I have an idea of and I favor Republicans because I voted for Mr. Trump the last two elections.
Sure. And
whether it's him or DeSantis or anybody else on the Republican side, on the school choice, and I did this when I was in high school, half day of work, half day of school, the last period is open discussion for the student body, particularly in high school, because this will be able to smoke out anybody who has a mental problem out in the open. And if these people are not allowed to accumulate a savings when they go into college, they're going to be into debt. They already don't want to work. And this is why we have this thing where immigration reform is in play, because they're going to fill in the void of young people who don't want to work. So There you go.
Well, you know, Edward, I think this is a great point. And this happened when I was in high school, too. And I have two kids that just finished high school, one a couple of years ago and one just a few months ago. And for my older daughter, I think they had something like that in place. I know in her senior year, she was out by 12 noon, and she did have a job, and she went to it. And I think they give, like, some credit for, like, some sort of cooperative work release type of thing for seniors that are working. But I agree with you. I think you need to encourage that, as well as these courses. Like, you know, when I was in high school, they had just changed the name from home economics to a course called Living on Your Own. Now, truth be told, I took this course because every time I looked in there were nothing but girls in there. I said, man, I want to go to that class. So I went to that class. And I learned a few things in that class, but I was really distracted by most of the girls in the class. But they do teach you things about personal finance and stuff like that. But it was very cursory. It wasn't very surface level. It wasn't very deep. And I know that it's better now because my younger daughter, she saw me the few times that I actually used checks. She saw me and she was like, she told me, oh, make sure you fill in the memo. And I was like, oh, what do you know about that? And she's like, oh, I learned about it in school. This is the routing number. She knew everything about a check. And I was like, wow, I don't remember knowing all of that when I was in high school. So I was impressed by that. And she also has a job. So I think a lot of this falls on the parents. But I agree, the schools should come alongside parents and help them in making sure that children learn about personal finance. And it's difficult because some kids might have parents that are reinforcing that at home. Others might not. But I agree that there are courses that they teach in college that they might want to introduce a little earlier in high school, maybe every year, you know, as part of some sort of, whether it's part of their health curriculum or something else. I think it's important to get kids understanding you have to grow up and earn a living, and you can't just be independently wealthy and whatnot. And I think that's what you're saying is accurate. We definitely need to have that in place as often. I'm sure there's a lot of schools that do. And being that, you know, just for example, born in Brooklyn, but I'm in Jersey now. And I think we have, 622 school districts in New Jersey. And they're all independent. They all have their own school board, their own school board president. So it's you would need some organizing effort to really try and get that into play everywhere. And I would say for the most part, I think a lot of schools probably do have it, but we could probably do more to help. And everything for me starts at home. It's parents that need to do it. So I think you might have an idea, maybe a whole business attached to it where you can, you know, create a curriculum that maybe can go national. But great point, Edward. Thank you for listening. I appreciate your kind words, and thanks for listening for as long as you have been. Edward in Tampa, Florida. Big shout out to you guys. And we continue. Let us go to Cleveland, Ohio, WEOL. Let's check in with John. John in Cleveland, Ohio. What's up? You're on with Rich Valdez.
Hi. I really think that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. would be a real boon. I don't really care much for either party, Republicans or Republicans, because I think they're both mouthpieces for the military-industrial complex in this country. Mm-hmm. They try to outdo each other in demonizing countries around the world to set them up for sanctions, strangulation, invasions, and bombings. And this is a bane on us for the last, I really think, for 80 years or more. And I think that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has taken on some of the most anti-social and dangerous lobbies in the country with all their money and power. The military-industrial complex, he wants to bring the troops home from the nearly 1,000 bases that the United States has squatting on other countries around the world. He wants to check the power of the corrupt and lying big pharma. He's taken them on, and I think that people that are disgusted with the sameness of the Republicans and Democrats have a real choice this time, and I think he's really a national treasure and has immense moral courage to take on these powerful lobbies that have driven us into bankruptcy and wars around the world and dangerous drugs that are only found out much too late that they've harmed millions of people through successful suits. And I think that he should be rewarded, and there should be a kind of a cordon of protection among the people around him, because he's going to be attacked by the media, which has hundreds of millions of dollars of drug advertisements. They're bought and paid for. The politicians are bought and paid for. The FDA and the CDC get most of their money from Big Pharma. So I think he's going to come under a lot of attacks and ridicule and smear jobs, and I think people should rally around him and support him. And not allow them to discredit or smear or ignore him. I think we've got a real chance for a change.
John, I think you're right on all of it, except for the part I'll say, when you're in politics or radio or any other public-facing position, you're always open to the criticism and attacks of other people. I mean, just read the comments on any of my social media posts, and you'll see there's always a critic out there. But that's part and parcel of the job. So I think he won't be insulated from scorn and ridicule and criticism, but from physical threats of his safety, I think, yes, absolutely. And most presidential candidates, when they reach a certain point, I don't know what the criteria is, but they are eventually eligible for Secret Service protection, I think based on polling or how often they win in primaries. I really don't know how it goes. I'll find out. But yeah, I agree that he should have some Secret Service protection and his own private protection through his campaign funding and whatnot. I agree. Listen, I think Kennedy, I would love to, I am a real fan of our republic. I'm a real fan of true debate. And I can have a dog in the fight and still want to have a good fight, right? You know, you go to like a UFC fight or a boxing match, and you might have somebody you're rooting for, but you don't want them to fight a pansy, right? You want to see the best fight, you know, knock down, bash them, grab them type of drag them kind of fight that you've ever seen, because that's the entertaining aspect of it. And as an observer of this sport we call politics, that's what I want to see. And I think Kennedy makes a lot of points. He brings a lot of things to the table. I agree with you that there is an establishment within our government. Some call them the deep state, the administrative state, whatever and what have you, the elite, the establishment, whatever title you want to give them. There are people, like you said, in both parties that have sold out to special interests, whether they be the special interests of the military-industrial complex that want to continue to not just build our military, but, you know, profit from war. And I'm all about the peace through strength model of Ronald Reagan. I think it's good for us to be ahead of our enemies with technology and in space and in everything. Be armed, have lots of guns, and never use them if you don't have to. I think that's the way the world should be. An armed society is a polite society, and I think our country is no different. With respect to what Kennedy can bring, it reminds me of what his uncle said, that, you know, we should break the CIA up into, I don't know, it was 1 million pieces or 50,000 pieces or whatever it was he said in his speech. And I agree with that. I think there's certain elements of our government that need to be disrupted. They need to be removed. They need to be minimized so that it's we, the people, that are in control, not they, the government. Excellent call, John. I appreciate it. Big shout out to WEOL, Cleveland, Ohio. Going to take a quick pause right here and get back to your calls. We got calls from Montana, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and more. Straight ahead, I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. It's Open Phone America. You get to call in on whatever topic you like. And today is the 78th anniversary, the 15th of August, of the Japanese surrendering in World War II. Again, always a big shout out to all of those who gave the ultimate sacrifice, and everybody who served in uniform, I salute all of you. Let us continue the conversation here. Where are we going? Let's go to Andy in Butler, Pennsylvania, KDKA. Go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Good evening, Rich, or I guess good morning at this point.
Yes, muy buenos días.
When President Biden was first asked about what happened in Maui, he said no comment. I personally believe that's because he's been told, if you're ever asked anything that you don't understand, say no comment. For instance, if you asked him who the Secretary of Defense was, he would not say Lloyd Austin. He would say no comment. If you asked him who the president was, he would proudly tell you President Harris.
Right.
So afterward, they decided no comment wasn't a good thing for him to say. So now the people that run the Biden puppet have told him to say, I'll be going to Maui as soon as it's appropriate. Now, he hasn't been to East Palestine, Ohio yet, and he said he'd go there when it was appropriate. And I don't think anybody died in that, much less the massive amounts of death and destruction we've had in Maui. So I can't possibly see how President Biden could get to Hawaii before the end of the decade.
You know, it's an interesting point. And I was ripping Biden earlier tonight because I said, I didn't appreciate the comments he made at his campaign stop in Milwaukee. And I stand somewhat corrected. And my criticism was based on what he said and how he said it. And the fact that he was, kind of like speaking like a bureaucrat rather than like a president. But we do have some audio of him saying that the federal government and his administration is committed to being there for them. And I want to play those just, for the sake of fairness. Let's go with Biden, Hawaii, cut one.
I've spoken to Governor Josh Green multiple times and reassured him the state will have everything it needs from the federal government.
He also said this.
All that area they got to plow up. They can't do it now because they don't know how many bodies are there. They don't know what's left. Imagine being a mom or dad, wondering where your child is. Imagine being a husband or wife, a mother or father. It's really tough stuff.
And here's how he finished that.
Our thoughts and prayers with the people of Hawaii, but not just our prayers. Every asset they need will be there for them.
So, Andy, again, I think I was a little rough on Biden earlier. Not that he gets a pass and I'm going to vote for him or anything like that. But I felt like his comments were just so empty and unempathetic. And I felt that that's what they needed to hear. And again, even these comments, they weren't great. The fact that he's, really addressing the governor of Hawaii, I think that's something that's important. I think it's really important for him to address the people and not at a campaign stop in Milwaukee, but, maybe from somewhere in the White House saying, hey, look, we care about you. We're here for you. You matter to us, and we're going to be there. And I guess he tried that. And all my biases aside, I think all of us are pulling for the people in Hawaii. So, Andy, I thank you for the call. I appreciate it. We're going to get to the rest of your calls straight ahead. We got calls from Arkansas, Montana, and Ohio coming right to you right after this.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Valdez.
All right, to Akron, Ohio we go. It's the speed round. We don't have a liner for speed round, so I'll do it. It's the speed round. Frank in Ohio, go right ahead. WNIR.
Yeah, my heart, prayers, and tears go out for all those people that were molested and raped, especially those coming over the border.
Mm-hmm.
That have been raped. They're at least 30% or more. But I want to share something. I want to go back to topic. That woman, I want to give New Jersey kudos for ruling in the Catholic Church's favor. Okay, she can go catch unemployment. I believe every child deserves to have a dad. Okay, I believe every child deserves to have a dad. So
I'm with you on
that.
She can
just go on unemployment. If she can just go on unemployment and start her own club hose without Joes.
I think you're 100 hose without Joes. Oh, my goodness. That was rough. But thank you, Frank. I appreciate it. And I agree. The court got this one right. Let's go to Rusty, Ash Flat, Arkansas, KSAR out of Missouri. Rusty, go right ahead.
Hi. How are you, Rich?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
I was wanting to talk about the Hunter Biden deal because, 30 miles down the road, he was down here at court here a while back. They won't claim the kid.
Well, actually, President Biden recently claimed his 7th grandchild in an interview that he did. It was about a week ago. So I know he finally claimed him. They don't let the kid have the last name, though, and their excuse for that was that the Biden name brings a lot of controversy, and they wanted to protect that kid from the controversy. I'll tell you, you will be damned if I have a child that doesn't have my name. But it's a great point that you bring up. He was fooling around in Arkansas, did his thing, has a baby there, and he should do the right thing and stop. You're getting millions and millions and millions. I think at some point $1 billion. Just pay the child support, bro. If I got to pay mine, you got to pay yours. Thanks, Rusty. I appreciate it. Let us wrap up now with Frank in Evergreen, Montana. KOFI. Go right ahead. Quickly.
Hi, Rich. I just want to be real quick. I want to say
yes, sir.
The biggest problem in our government, in our education system, and the world is Microsoft. It's all built on patches. It's the most hackable operating system in the world. It's not.
And our federal government seems to love it, Frank. I don't know, it was 2 weeks ago we got hacked. The same thing, Microsoft email, Microsoft servers. I think you're onto something. It seems like it's not only very hackable, but it always begs the question to me, and I guess you can call me a conspiracy theorist. Let me put on my tinfoil hat for a second. But I think that is a common way for it's like, no, I don't want you to steal my car, but I left the keys in it and it's running right outside, that type of thing. I think when there's sensitive information and people may want somebody to, get hold of it, who knows if our enemies are paying people to say, hey, look, this is going to go down for a minute. We're going to do this and boom, boom, boom. I don't know. But it seems like it happens way too often. I think you're onto something, Frank. Anyway, folks, that's all I've got. They're kicking me out of here. The rest of the folks are coming in right after me. So make sure you're here tomorrow. Hasta la próxima. Until the next time, take care, good night, and God bless. And I am Rich Valdez. Make sure you tune in tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. And don't go anywhere because there's another show right after this one.